Welcome to Wisdom and Torah Ministries. Always delightful to be here with you today. And we're going to be sharing about the Torah portion, Shelach Lecha, which is Numbers chapter 13 and Numbers chapter 15 to the last verse. And we're going to only be focusing on one particular area of the portion. Now, we need to always understand the importance of the commandment in its proper context. And with everything going on in Israel right now, with the land of Israel, how the Jews are defending the land from the Iranians and also from all the other enemies abroad, it is important to recognize why we have to defend the land of Israel. Regardless of the government, right now the conversation is whether or not the government of Israel is a legitimate government because people don't know the Bible and they question everything. They don't realize that in the story of Israel, they've always had kings of Israel that they were not necessarily loyal to God, but because of the office of the kingship, and because of the office of the priesthood was holy to God, and it was a gift from God, a grant from God, those things, they still ordained by God. I'm not saying that today's government is a kingship, because it's not. It's a democratic type structure government. But still, they are in the land of Israel. They are leading the people in the land of Israel. And the Sabbath is still a national weekly holiday of observance, and the feasts are their cultural and also biblical observance of the holidays, biblical holidays. So the Torah has a lot of, weight within the structure of the government of Israel today, because they are the people of the book, except that they're not being led in a theocracy in which God himself sent his son to be the king of Israel. That will happen in the future. In the meantime, instead of getting into arguments about whether the Jews that are there are Jews or not, which I think is a really weird and weird argument, just an anti-Semitic argument, really, we should get into the legality as to why we must always respect the land, defend the land. This week's portion is a perfect example of what happens when Israel rejects. I'm talking about Israel rejecting the gift that God gives them. And then you have to consider, if God is serious about his own people rejecting his gift and there are consequences to it, then how much more do you think will happen to the enemies of God who want to destroy the people of the land and usurp the land that does not belong to them, like in the day the modern day Palestinians, and in the ancient world was the Amalekites and the Philistines and so on and so forth, and the Canaanites. See, the principles still carry on. So we are going to be focusing more on the legality of the Bible in reference to the land being the land of God, not the land of the Jews. It's the land of God, whom God gave us a gift to dwell in the land, but the land is God's, according to the book of Leviticus. It tells us the land belongs to the Lord. You are not to sell the land permanently because it belongs to the Lord. That's why you have the laws of Jubilee. That's why even in Israel today, you can lease the land, but you cannot own the land. Even to this day, they understand these principles. So what are the penalties if you do not believe in returning to the land as one of the natives? Or what would happen to you if you attack the people of the land and the land if you're a foreigner? Why is this so relevant specifically today in the 21st century? We see a whole war that is completely developing in the Middle East because the enemy, Iran, is actually making it known to the whole world. They want to destroy the Jewish people and their land, and they want to get rid of the people, and they want to destroy the land, and just like the Palestinians. Is Israel defending themselves? Is it justified? Absolutely is justified. Now, why is justified? That's the question. How can we prove biblically? Recently, there was a question posed to a senator. Forgot the guy's name. A senator. He's from Texas. Cruz. Tucker asked him a question about why do we have to support Israel? And Cruz, as a Christian, he quotes, "I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you," which is in actually Genesis chapter 12. Tucker, as a cynical person that he is, he began to question where he gets that from, and also How is that verse related to the ancient world in regards to Israel and Abraham and the people of Israel back in the day? How is that relevant today? And in a way, I'm glad Tucker asked that question, because now a lot of Christian people are going to be studying now, trying to clarify what they mean, because in reality, it's been quoted for so long, but people don't know, or they will not be able to give you a biblical proof and historical proof as to why it's important to support Israel, even though that law was given almost 3,800 years ago. Still binding, because it is God who did an unconditional, unilateral covenant in Genesis 15. That anyone that comes into the covenant, and this is the problem that crews and Christians have, they don't see themselves as Israel. Therefore, by not seeing themselves as the people of the book, being grafted into the olive tree, now they are not going to be able to justify why to stand for Israel, because their theology has separated them from any kind of connection with the covenant. So it's like digging yourself in a hole, you know? And anyone with a little study can reverse that verse to a Christian brother who doesn't really necessarily study the Bible from his legal perspective. So guess what? This week's portion is exactly, it lends itself to answer this question. Hopefully I'll do a better job than Cruz did, I pray. Okay? Remember, we're going to be following certain sequences. My methodology, which I follow, what the methodology follows: covenants, righteousness and justice, honor and shame, new creation, chaos and order, and sacred space. The land of Israel, sacred space, through a covenantal relationship. Okay? The covenants of God are eternal, are irrevocable. The gifts of God are irrevocable. So in order for us to understand why we must fight for and stand with Israel, we need to understand the legality behind it, so that when people ask us, we have a good answer for them biblically, not theologically, religiously, but a biblical legal answer. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do today. Okay, so I want you to join me right here. We're going to be studying this, but before that, do me a favor. Will you take 1 second and share this link with everybody on your social media? Please share with others. Subscribe, share, and like the YouTube channel, so we can grow, and maybe more people will tune in and come in and study this stuff with us and validate the information. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today. So we're going to start in the book of Numbers, chapter 13. I'm going to share the screen from here on, because I want you to see for yourselves what I'm reading. So in the book of Numbers, chapter 13, the beginning of verse 1 says, "And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Send for yourself men, let them explore the land of Canaan. I am about to give to the Israelites." Okay, the word there is, it should be the word Natan. Let me make sure I go into the Hebrew. Natan, very important word. Okay, with that being said, I want to explain on that, and we're going to be talking about it. I'm going to read the first few verses. I'm going to give you some explanation about what these words mean. Okay, and it's important you understand the legality. All right, so it says that I will give to the Israelites from each tribe of his fathers, send one man, everyone a leader from among them. So I'm not going to read every single name, because you already know this. You should be able to do the reading on your own anyway. We're just going to do the study. On verse 17 says, Moses sent them, the 12, to the land of Canaan. And he said to them, go up like this to the Negev, and go up the hills of hill country. And you will see what the land is like, if the people who are inhabited are strong or weak, or whether there are few or many. Okay, you know the whole story. And we know the time of the year. So I'm going to make a sidebar here to tell you the time of the year when they went up. Let me read this. Verse 19. And whether the land that they are inhabiting is a good or bad, or whether the cities they are inhabiting are camps or fortifications, whether the land is fertile or lean, or whether there are trees on it or not, you will show yourself courageous, and you will take some of the fruit of the land. It was the time of the first ripe of the grapes. We need to know what time of the year that is. So I have some notes I want to read to you here. In ancient Israel, the time of the first ripe grapes typically occurred in the early summer, around the month of Tammuz, between June and July, Hebrew calendar, which corresponds to the June and early July of the modern Gregorian calendar. The biblical reference to this is Numbers 13:20, mentions that the spies went out to scout the land at the time of the first ripe grapes. Remember, they were there for 40 days, right? So therefore, now you know exactly the time frame. Between June and July, they started going. The final harvest of the grapes occurs between September and October. Okay, let me continue reading here. It was like late June, and the spies return after 40 days. And they return, their return coincides with the month of Elul, which is the month of repentance, August and September, around the time of the great harvest peak. And I said September, October, I was wrong. It's actually August and September. Now, this is connected with the end of times in Revelation 14. When you read Revelation 14, verse 14, 20, it's actually talking about the one sitting on the clouds in the heavens, which is Messiah in this role as future king. And then it's talking about the harvest, the late harvest, and the ripe, the winepress. It's talking about the second coming of Messiah, which will take place in the fall holidays. Remember that. The agricultural context. Grapes in ancient Israel begin ripening in late June, with the first clusters suitable for picking early midsummer. The main grape harvest extended into July and August, especially in the warmer regions like the Jordan Valley and other areas. So now we have an idea what time of the year the spies are being sent out. It's interesting that today we have the war happening around the same time as the grapes would have been ripened in that time frame. And what is right now the message given to the nations about Israel? Many people are saying, no, the land is dangerous. Don't go. But I'll say the land is good, very good. And the land is prosperous. And the land belongs to God. And no matter what, the world is saying, don't go to Jerusalem. It's not safe. But yet there are people that even in their worst situation, they're still singing to God and they're still keeping Shabbat. And they're still observing the commandments, although they're being attacked by the enemy. So it is important that we understand that times mean things. It just so happened that the attacks to Israel today and their national identity, and they're fighting for their lives because Iran is discriminately throwing rockets to them, killing anything and anyone, even hospitals, while Israel is attacking their main bases and its targeted strikes. You have to meditate that the whole fight is for the land and for the people. Exactly what God promised in Abraham in chapter 15 of the book of Genesis, that he will give them a land and a people. Whether you're a Christian or a Jew, the fact that you're defending the land and the people, regardless of the conditions you think the people are in, regardless whether you think the government is legit or not, the people are a representation of the Jewish, of the people of the book. Otherwise, why would they stay in the land of Israel? Why not move to Europe and reject their identity and who they are now so they can have peace? It will be easy for them to say, well, we're not Jewish. We just came here a long time ago. We're pretending to be Jewish. We're going to go to Europe. We renounce the Jewish people. We're going to go into the nations. Why don't they do that? Because they see themselves as people of the covenant. In their imperfections, in their insecurities, in their rebellion. God has proven always that no matter how much they rebel, God always keeps his promises regardless, and I'll prove it to you. There were certain rebellions that Israel caused against God. Let me go to the beginning here. There's a list, and I don't think I have it in Spanish, in English. There is a list of, man, I thought I had it. I apologize, guys. I don't have it, but I'm going to read it in Spanish. Give me a second. Numbers 13. I do have it in Spanish. So there are 15. I'm going to read it to you in Spanish, translate it for you. This is what Israel did for all the people who assume that in order for God to bless his people, that Israel has to be perfect in everything they do, not understanding the structure of the covenant, that God came with them to give them the inheritance and the land. Understanding ancient covenants would allow you to understand why we must stand for Israel. Watch. In the ancient world, Israel, this is the story, especially on the Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, about the rebellions and how Israel disobeyed, lack of faith, and complaining against Moses and Aaron which is actually complaining against God because God placed Aaron and Moses in the position of authority. So by going against Aaron and Moses, they are going against the plans of God. And this is the reason that even in the story, in this week's Torah portion, when the 10 spies brought a bad report, what did Moses and Aaron do? They hit the deck. They cried out to the Lord because they understood that they were not fighting against Moses. They were choosing themselves a different leader. And now they're putting themselves in the position of God because it was God who chose Moses and Aaron. They didn't choose themselves, pick themselves to do the work. So the first one is the rebellion in the Red Sea. Exodus 14. The second one is the waters of Marah. It's Exodus 15. I apologize that I don't have it in English. I don't know why. I should have been there, but I can't find it. Then the complaint about the food, the manna and the meat. Then you have the lack of water in Rephidim. Then you have the worship of the golden calf. They have the complaint against God, in general against God. Then you have the craving of meat in Numbers 11. Then the murmur against with Miriam and Aaron against Moses. Then you have the rejecting of the entry to the land of Israel, which was the promise. And I'll show you what that means in a minute. And then they tried to go in after they rejected without the approval of God. They just keep messing it up every time. The rebellion of Korah, Dathan and Abiram, that comes next week in the portion coming up. And then the complaint that brought the penalty to Korah. Then you have the waters of Meribah. And again, more complaints and more rebellion against God. They're complaining about everything. And then the apostasy of Baal Peor in regards to Balaam and Balak. We have all those things. And yet, through all of that, the God of Israel has proven himself to be faithful. Not only to the land, but also to the people. And this is the essence of understanding why we must stand for Israel and the people, even in their circumstances, because God made a covenant. And this covenant is different. There are different types of covenant. And this one is called a grant covenant. I'm going to read a little bit more in the book of Numbers, chapter 13 and 14. And then I'm going to go to chapter 15, and we're going to start breaking down why you must stand for the land of Israel and for the people. Regardless of what you think they're worthy or not, it's irrelevant in this case. Because in the history of Israel, when did any of the kings of Israel were ever completely loyal to God? Not even Solomon, who is a type of the Messiah, was completely loyal to God. Towards the end of his life, he committed idolatry and he did some unspeakable things. And he was chosen by God to be the king. And some of the other kings of Israel that they transgressed. And some of them were very wicked. But God made a promise to David that his kingship would forever be established. And if they did not obey, then consequences will come. Now, just like the priesthood, these are grants. No one can take them away. And I will give you some historical evidence to back up that claim. Okay? And by the way, I'm going to say something here. And we should be ashamed of ourselves that right now, at this particular juncture, this is the most amazing opportunity that we will have in order to really know our Bible and defend the covenant of Israel. We are again in the position of the 10 spies, except that is worldwide. We are looking for a Joshua and a Caleb who will stand up and defend the promise that God gave to our forefathers, because it's based on the oath. It's all based on an oath. When did God take that oath to our forefathers? Genesis 15. And believers, I call to all the Christian people, you need to start really looking into this stuff, because this is the evidence that allows us to stand for a people that in their minority, they are having dominating effect into the whole worldwide geopolitical influence right now. And if you stand with Israel, and if you stand with the people of Israel, regardless of who you think or what you think righteousness is, because God promised an inheritance and descendants to Abraham. And I remind you, in Genesis 15, the condition for the promise of the land and the people was not complete obedience. It was actually a gift of loyalty that God gave Abraham. Later on, we see when Mount Sinai comes and God gives them the commandments as a sovereign and Israel as a vassal state, that God says, if you obey my laws, then you get to live in my land. And then I will bless you. But if you disobey my Torah and you willfully rebel against my commandments, then I will kick you out of my land. He never he never did away with his people. He just basically let them live according to the expectations or the obedience and disobedience, which is judgment if they disobeyed, and obedience if they obey, blessings if they obeyed. But the land still permanently belongs to God, whom he gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as a promise and an oath for their descendants forever. So no, God does not change, and the gifts of God are irrevocable. But we need to prove this point. And I'm saddened that when it matters, people who call themselves the people of faith in social media, they're not equipped to really make a compelling case to defend the people and the land according to scripture and according to history and according to its legality. It's time that we equipped ourselves. As for me and my house, we will defend the land and the people. And I will stand for the land and the people. And I will tell you, the land is very good. And it's really good. I was there 3 weeks ago. And it's extremely prosperous. If only we return to God and we return to our King and we value what the gifts is given us, and we will fight for it regardless, even if it costs our lives. But we must be loyal to the Lord, because by being loyal to the promises and the oath he took, we are being loyal to his honor and to his name. And that's the reason why he sent Yeshua, to be there as a mediator so that we can return and stand for his people and his land, which is actually standing for his name, which means standing for his honor. And I want to defend the honor of my King. And I hope you do too. Let's get into the information. I'm going to continue reading chapter 13, and then we're going to go and start breaking down some of this information. Okay? All right. Okay, so here we go. So it says in verse 9 of the book of Numbers, let me read here. Verse 17. So Moses, I already talked about the grapes. Let me read a little bit more in regards, verse 25. They returned from exploring the land at the end of 40 days. And they came to Moses and Aaron and the entire community of the Israelites in the desert of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the community that they showed them the fruit of the land. They showed them that it was prosperous. And they told him, we came to the land that you sent us, and it is flowing with milk and honey. This is its fruit. Yet the people who are inhabiting, give me a second. Give me 1 second. Okay. The people, where am I? Yet the people who are inhabiting it are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw descendants of the Anakites there. The Amalekites are living in the land and the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites are living in the hill country, and the Canaanites are living at the sea on the banks of the Jordan. Now remember, they're bringing a good report and a bad report. They're saying the land is good. There's blessing. There's this, there's that. But yet, what happens? We're afraid. They're stronger than us. You know how many people today, when you mention Israel, say, oh, no, that's not safe over there. I don't want to go. It's dangerous. There's war. Guys, there are places here in Florida I'm not going to walk around at midnight. But yet in Jerusalem, I walk around at midnight. I don't feel afraid. I'm not afraid. Now, there's certain places in Israel I'm not going to walk around by myself with a Magen David on a hat, because they're going to know who I am, obviously. Gaza right now is isolated in the corner. But when you mention Israel to people, it's as if it's the worst thing you can mention. They go by what social media says. They go by what hearsay, not what they know. These people saw the land being prosperous. They brought the fruit to prove that the land was good, very good. And yet they brought a bad report because they got scared. You see, the Israel here in this verse is very different than the Israel that came out, that went the second generation. 40 years later, They were willing to fight for the land. But right here, 2 years after they came out of Egypt, now they don't want to inherit the land. They don't want to go in and possess it. They were still thinking as slaves. And the text tells you that they wanted to choose their own leader to return to the land of Israel, the land of Egypt, and die there. Crazy. They'd rather go back to their slavery and to their captors instead of being free and fight for the land and defend it. That's why you have many Jews living outside of Israel today. They don't want to go to the land. It costs them something. They have to actually fight and believe in the God of Israel to be safe and to have their safety, because they're being attacked from every side. Lebanon in the north. You have Syria in the northeast. You have Jordan in the east. You have Iraq in the farther east. You have Persians in the farther east, where they are in Iran. Then you have Saudi Arabia. Then you have Egypt. Then you have Gaza. Then you have all of the Arabs living inside of the Jewish community. It's easy to live in the diaspora. They're not as persecuted, but you know what? God needs to bring his people back to the land. So anti-Semitism is going to continue to rise up. Persecution is going to return. Just wait until the last witness of the Holocaust dies. There's still only a few. But in my opinion, when the last person who survived the Holocaust is no longer among us on this earth, it will not be another generation before it will repeat itself.
Yep.
Or forget history quite quickly. And we need to stand with Israel now. Let us never let that happen again. Let's continue reading here. Hopefully it's making sense to you guys. All right. And Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, surely let us go up and let us take possession of it, because surely we will be able to prevail over it. And I'll repeat those words. Surely let us go up and let us take possession of it, because surely we will be able to prevail over it. And the men who went up with him said, we're not able to go up to the people because they are stronger than us. Interesting. Iran was supposed to be stronger than Israel. They're getting defeated. They're getting embarrassed. They're getting humiliated. Interesting. The Egyptians were supposed to be stronger than the slaves, and yet the God of Israel showed up and embarrassed them. The Babylonians were supposed to be stronger than the captives of Israel, and their God interceded on their behalf and embarrassed the Babylonians. The Persians were supposed to be stronger than anybody else, and God chose a king, prophesied 150 years after he was born, to deliver his people from captivity, and yet less than 10% left Persia in the time of Cyrus. And what happened after that? An enemy rose up. Haman came in. And the story of Esther develops because they rejected the land. In every instant, Israel at one point or another has rejected the land. Let us not make the same mistake. In the wilderness, they rejected the land. They spent 40 years in the dispersion. Babylonians, the Jews from Babylon, less than 10% return. They rather go to east towards modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan, and also Iran at this moment, and even India, and they never returned to the land. The northern kingdom got lost in the dispersion. They didn't want to return, except a few did return. I mean, guys, this is all about what do we do with the land? Why is this important? And why you don't want to be on the side of speaking against the land of the people, regardless of what you think and who you think they are, because God made a covenant. And that's what we're going to be talking about here shortly. Okay? All right, it says, so they start complaining. They even saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak. And everyone focuses on this Torah portion on the giants and the Nephilim. Okay, that's not really the topic of the study. But let us study a little bit more about what's going on here. What is the importance? Okay? Now watch. When you come here to, there you go, a grant covenant. What is a grant covenant? Let's talk about that. A grant covenant is a royal grant in the ancient Near East. It was a type of a formal unconditional covenant in which a superior, usually a king, and in this case, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh in Genesis 15, bestowed gifts, privileges, or rights upon a loyal subject or vassal. such as payment for future service, but as a reward for past faithfulness. In Genesis 14, God is faithful to God when he says to the king of Sodom, I will not accept anything you give me, for I have raised my hand in an oath to loyalty to God when he met Melchizedek. Because what happened with Melchizedek in chapter 15 was a covenantal meal. Okay? Number one, grand covenant in the ancient Near East. Definition. A grand covenant was a permanent, binding gift given by a king or deity to a servant based on proven loyalty. It was not a mutual agreement like a treaty, but one-sided bestowal of favor. Okay? Key features. Element description. Initiated by a superior, the king, or a suzerain initiated the grant. It's unconditional, given as a reward for past loyalty. Not requiring, listen to this is the key, not requiring future performance, perpetually, usually irrevocable, sometimes extended to descendants, legal document often sealed, witness, deposited in temples or archives. The language will be like this: because you have been faithful, the covenant reflects grace given, not earned. An example of this is found in the Hittite or Neo-Assyrian royal grant to loyal officials or soldiers, a land grant. It says, the Middle Assyrian and Babylonian records where land tax exemption or protections were given to individuals or families forever. As long as the king lives, that land that was given to them was forever. If the kingdom fell, if the king dies, then those lands were done away with. But the God of Israel lives forever. He's still faithful and true. He never changes. Therefore, when the Father who made a covenant with Abraham and he ratified with an oath, and because he lives forever, thus means that the covenant that was made between God and Abraham in regards to the land and descendants, still binding and forever, as long as the king who gave the grant still alive. Does that make sense? I would just love to have an opportunity to stand in a public arena to let everybody know how good and faithful God is and to explain these things. Can you imagine if we're able to explain it so people will hear it and they will look at the people of Israel differently, even though they are in disobedience and they've done things they're not supposed to, just like we have, and yet God is still faithful to his oath and his promise, and he's still bound by his oath and the oath that he took. Think about it. The God of creation took an oath to a people you don't know, in a land maybe some of you have never been to. And he's still protecting them. And we have evidence of them being protected throughout its history. Yes, have they been persecuted? Yes. Have they disobeyed? Yes. Have they rebelled? Yes. Have they transgressed? Yes. But still, God has been faithful to his oath. So standing for the land and the people at this moment is you are standing for the oath that God took. And you are never going to be missing, and you're never going to be wrong by standing on the side of God. Ever. I'd rather go alone and stand by the side of God than go with what the world says against the people and the land and find myself to someday find out that the God of Israel, he is true and that he did keep the oath. No, I believe it now. I trust it today, and I will forever trust that the God of Israel who made that oath in Genesis 15 is still faithful and loyal to this day, and he has proven it. And we need you to stand for it. And we need you to learn this so you can explain it to people who don't know. This is the time for us to stand and be the people that God deserves. Loyal, faithful, who are willing to fight with nothing to gain. Caleb did. He was a Kenizzite. He's not even a descendant of Jewish people. His name reflects complete loyalty, but yet the name Caleb means dog. This man whose name is the dog, Cholev, he's all heart. That's why the word Caleb can mean two things. This man who actually was sent as one of the leaders of that tribe, knowing that he came as a descendant of Esau, but yet he grafted himself into that tribe. He was willing to testify on behalf of that oath that God took to our forefathers and our ancestors. And because of it, God gave him a grant in the book of Joshua. In the book of Joshua, it tells you, and we're going to read it real quickly. I want you to see this. This is important. This is who we are right now. Caleb should be the highlight of who we are. When you look into the story here, and I'm going to go all the way down, Caleb, I want you to see when Caleb says, and he silenced the people, and he stood up, and he encouraged people to take the land and defend it. He was standing for the name of God, and he was standing for the oath that God took. That's loyalty with nothing to gain. And because of it, what did the Lord do for him? Let's find out. What did God do for him in Joshua chapter 14, verse 9 to verse 14? Moses swore on that day, saying, surely the land that your foot has trodden on will be an inheritance to you and your sons forever, because you remain true to Adonai your Elohim. He became loyal. Watch. Then, look, the Lord has kept me alive, just as he promised, these 40 years, from the time that the Lord spoke the word to Moses while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Now look, today, I am 85 years old. Today, I'm still strong. Just as on the day that Moses sent me, as my strength was then, so now is also my strength for war, for daily activities. So now give me this hill country that the Lord spoke on that day. You heard, for you heard that on that day the Anakites were there, and the great and the fortified cities. Perhaps the Lord is with me, and I will drive them out, just as the Lord promised. And Joshua blessed him, and gave Hebron to Caleb, son of Jephunneh, as an inheritance. Thus, Hebron became the inheritance of Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, on this day. Why? Because he remained true to the Lord, the God of Israel. Let us learn from that. Let us be loyal to God. Let us be true to him now. The world hates Israel without cause. They get invaded. Their children get murdered, burned alive. The women get raped. They get captured. They get taken hostage. And the world turns on the victims. The victim says, no, we're not going to be victims anymore. We're going to fight against the enemies. And then the believers are not defending the people who were victims, who are defending themselves, who are defending the land and the people, which is actually the promise God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in an oath. Yeah, you may call them to say they're not perfect, and you may even complain about whether they're loyal to God or not. For they're the ones defending the land. And here we are in the Western world saying we believe in the Messiah and we are blessed to be part of Israel, and we are attacking the people who are defending the land. We need you to be like Joshua and Caleb right now. Don't worry about the giants, because our inheritance has been given to us as a gift. And we're going to continue on that line of thinking here in a moment, but I want to make sure you understand what we're trying to do and what we're trying to convey here with this message. Let's go back. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the topic. Okay, I need you guys to share this with people. Let others know. We need to learn how to explain the covenants of God and how do they affect us. If we do not stand what are we here for? We're here to defend the honor of God through Yeshua the Messiah. And that's what Yeshua did. I came to reveal who he was. He came to reveal his name. Yeshua came to restore God's honor. That's what we're supposed to do. Now let's continue. Grand covenants in the Bible. Several biblical covenants mirror the grand covenant pattern. The Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 15 and 17. God initiates it unilaterally. In other words, God is the one who takes responsibility for everything. Abraham believed and God reckoned it as righteousness. The covenant is perpetual, promising the land, descendants, and a blessing. That's why I stand with Israel, because it was a unilateral covenant. A Davidic covenant. God rewards David's faithfulness by promising an eternal dynasty. The covenant is unconditional and granted to David's seed. In both, God's promise is not contingent on future obedience, but rooted in God's faithfulness in the past relationship. People cannot understand that. Let me give you some more examples. Let me give you some ancient Near Eastern grants. Let's go to the world that Israel lived in the time of the Bible was written. It says, the quote right here. Let me go right here. Primary, no, that's not the one. Right here. It says, this is a quote right here. Primary source is the Kuduru of Nebuchadnezzar I. It's in the British Museum in the reign of Nebuchadnezzar I in the year 1125 to 1104. The content is a grant of land to Siti Marduk, son of Marduk Nazir. This is what it was. This is the way it was structured back then, and it's exactly the way Genesis 15 is structured. It says, quote, Nebuchadnezzar, king of the world, king of Babylon, gave a field located in the district of Edina to Siti Marduk, son of Marduk Nazir, for eternity. May no future prince or governor revoke this grant. If anyone changes it, may the gods curse him with evil. And you can find it right here in J.B. Pritchard, Near Eastern Texts. I have this book. I also have the one on the kitchen, is not quoted here. But what is it called? It's called Reliability of the Old Testament by Kitchen. Let me read you a few things. Characteristics of a royal land grant. Kuduru inscription. The royal titles and invocations of the god. In this case was Marduk. Grant formula is using the verb nadanu, which is in the Hebrew will be natan, to give. Recipient and lineage are the receivers. List of gods and witnesses. In the Bible, God says, I call heaven and earth as a witness for the covenant on Mount Sinai. In Genesis 15, it was actually God's word as a witness that he will follow through to give Abraham seed and an inheritance. And the curse against future revocation. Is this making sense to you? Everyone here locally, can you please let me know if this is making sense? Okay. All right. About you guys on YouTube, is it making sense to you? Give me your feedback, okay? Because I want to give you some information that you can have as to why we have to defend the land. It's in this week's Torah portion. Let's continue. Now, I'm going to talk about the word Natan. And it's actually connected with a Greek word that means the same thing. And I want to actually, let me take a quick break here. I want to take you to Genesis 15. And I want to read something here for you. If I can find it now, because when I find stuff, I can never get it. I had it all in order, but it'll get to me. Give me 1 second. No, it's not here. I think it's in the other chapter. I think it's 17, chapter 4, verse 17. There we go. I'm looking for it. Give me a second. Wow. And I had all my notes done and everything. Can't find it now. I'll find it. Give me a second. I'll get it. There we go. Right here. I want to share this with you. Has to do with covenant. Check it out. So I'm going to read the English first, because I have it in Spanish. Obviously, to you, that's not relevant because you all speak English here. God's gift to the people, to his people. Remember, grand covenants are irrevocable. The land, the people of Israel, that they were a gift to Abraham in chapter 15. The land was a gift in chapter 15. The kingship was given to David. The priesthood was given to Aaron and his sons. Numbers in 18 is going to be clear. Is going to be talking about that. Next week's Torah portion is all dealing about the gift given to the sons of Aaron. Keep that in mind. Okay, salvation is a gift. The gift of the Holy Spirit is a gift. And the citizenship for adopted clients in Ephesians, in all the verses like Galatians, is actually a gift. So we need to understand what this is about, okay? So I'm going to read this and I'm going to come back to the word Natan, and that'll be it for today. But I want you to get pretty much the essence of how this stuff was done, as to why I will always defend the land and the people, okay? A royal covenant or royal grant in the ancient Near East was a type of a formal unconditional covenant in which a superior, a king, I think I read that earlier, grants you gifts, privileges, or right to a loyal subject and vassal. I already read that. Now, covenant grants in the ancient Near East. We have definitions, and we have elements. The elements and description initiated by a superior, a king or sovereign, initiate the grant. Genesis 15, remember, God is the one initiating it when he tells Abraham in chapter 15. Let me read it to you really quickly. Listen to what he says, and I'm going to read it from chapter 14, verse 17 to verse 24, and we're going to continue chapter 15, not stopping. So you see how God is actually rewarding Abraham's loyalty to him instead of the king of Sodom. It says, after his return from defeating Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him in the valley of Shabet, that is the valley of the kings. And Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of the Most High, and he blessed them and said, blessed be Abram, and by God the Most High, maker of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tenth of everything. And the king of the king of Sodom said to Abram, I want you to pay attention to this particular dynamic going on after he had a covenantal meal with Melchizedek, because he had bread and wine. Keep that in mind. And there was tribute paid. He gave a tribute. Now he's not going to take the tribute of the king of Sodom. If he would have taken a tribute or a gift from the king of Sodom, that would have been treason against the king of the universe, who he came into a covenant with by having the bread and the wine when he encountered Melchizedek. Okay? And Abraham said to King Sodom, let me read verse 21. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the people, but the possessions take for yourselves. And Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to Adonai, my God Most High, maker of heaven and earth. Where did he ever raise his hand? The text doesn't tell you anywhere. It's actually connecting it with the previous verses when he encountered Melchizedek. He actually had an oath of allegiance to God, who delivered him from the enemies. And he was ratified with the wine and the bread. Now, watch. And it says that neither a threat nor a thong of a sandal will I take from all that belongs to you, that you may not say, watch this. This is all about making whose name great? Making God's name great, or making Sodom's king name great because he gave him something? It says, you may not, so that you may not say, I made Abram rich. Nothing besides what the servant have eaten, and the share of the men who went out with me will I take. Let Aner, Eschol, and Memre take their share. Now listen to chapter 15, how it starts. If we never read the previous verses, and you don't follow the importance of what happened in those verses, you're not going to see the loyalty that Abraham displayed based on a promise given to him years earlier in Genesis 12. And a promise. I will take you, I will bring you, I will give you. He had no children. He had no honor. He had no inheritance. And yet he believed. And yet he was faithful in a God that he barely knew. And then chapter 15 opens this way. After these things, what things? What I just read you. The word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, and your reward shall be very great. Then Abram said, O Adonai, my Lord, what will you give me? You see, what will you give me? What will be your gift? I continue to be childless, and my heir Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, look, you have not given me a descendant, and here a member of my household is my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, this person will not be your heir, but your own son will be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, look toward heavens and count the stars if you're able to count them. And he said to him, so shall your offsprings be. And he believed in God, and he reckoned unto him as righteousness. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give this land to you and possess it. That's why we believed in honoring the God of Israel and the land of Israel and the people of Israel, because it was given as a gift to Abraham and his descendants forever, right? If you don't believe in this, then you will speak against the people and you will speak against the land and focus on whether or not they're perfectly fit your theology, instead of understanding that if it falls in the category of a grant covenant, if it falls in the category of a grant covenant, if you understand the legality of a grant covenant of the ancient Near East, you would know that it's based on loyalty and not based on whether they'll be obedient or disobedient. Because already in the Torah, there are already clauses that God says, if you obey my covenant, I'll keep you in the land that I gave your forefathers. Later on, it became based on obedience that you can partake of the land. But God never says, I'm going to take your land away from you. No, I will scatter you from the promise, but I will bring you and I will return you to it, because I made an oath and he will stand to it. And he says in Deuteronomy chapter 30, if you repent and you circumcise your heart and you call out to the Lord, he will remember the covenant. We need to get this straightened out. And we need to make sure that we stand for Israel no matter what. Guys, I have nothing to gain on this right now. All I have to gain from this is people attacking, insulting, minimizing, because I understand these principles, and I'd rather be alone and stand on these principles defending the honor of God than to gain the acceptance of the world by being anti-Semitic. And this is not a point of self-righteousness. I'm afraid of not honoring God's word and his oath. I just want to be loyal to his oath. And I want to be loyal that I believe him when he said he will give Abraham an inheritance. And this type of position comes with a cost. But it's okay. Okay, because through Yeshua, our master and our Messiah, now we're grafted into this opportunity to be part of his kingdom. And I'm grateful. And I'm honored. And because of that, I will honor his name. And I will stand with his people and for his land. And as long as the Lord gives me breath in this world, I will continue to do my best to take people to the land of Israel on tours so that they can scout it out, so they can see how beautiful, how good the land is. Even with their imperfections, still the land of my king. And it is good. Okay, let's continue reading. And I want to read here, it says, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of the land of the Chaldeans to give this land to you to possess it. And he said, O Adonai Elohim, how will I know that I will possess it? And he said to him, and then he went through the whole ritual of the offerings, and there was blood in between, and he walked between the pieces. There's a whole ritual behind that. And we need to examine it. Okay? Read that. So let's examine that a little bit more. Grants. What are the grants? And how is that connected with the word in the New Testament? The Hebrew word natan means to give or to grant. And the Greek word is didomi. By the way, this is important because I did a study this morning trying to connect the word didomi, which means to give in Greek, and also to Natan in Hebrew, and they're very similar, says are highly comparable in both meaning and usage, especially in legal, covenantal, and theological contexts. They serve parallel roles in the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, and the Greek New Testament, Septuagint, and the New Testament. The word Natan, meaning to give, grant, bestowed, assign, or set, used broadly for giving gifts, land, blessing, laws, authority. Okay? Key uses in biblical Hebrew: covenant and land grants. I will give Natan this land to your descendants in Genesis 12, chapter 12, verse 7. And the Lord appeared to Abram, saying, to your offsprings, I will give this land, And he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Used in the Abrahamic covenant as a grant of land, a legal gift. It's irrevocable. Now, there's divine blessings. The Lord gives strength to his people in Psalms 29:11. Royal authority. God gave him the kingdom in 2 Samuel 12:8. Watch this. I give you the household of your master and the women of your master in your lap. I also give you the house of Israel and Judah. If that have been too little, I would have added too much, much more. You got to go back and read that in context. Commandments. I have given you these statutes, meaning that the Torah is a loving gift from God to us. It's irrevocable. No one can do away with it. That's why the Torah can never be done away with. It's a gift. That's why when we do the blessing of the Torah reading, blessed are you, O Lord our God, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach leolam va'et, Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natananu, we do the whole prayer. You have given us your Torah. It's a gift. The Torah is a gift to protect us, to guide us, to lead us. The land is a gift as an inheritance for his people. And the people were the gift to Abraham that we are grafted into. The Greek is didomi, meaning to give, grant, bestowed, permit, and offer. Appears widely in the Septuagint and the New Testament. Key uses in the Koine Greek, legal and royal grants. Like in Matthew 16:19, I will give you the keys of the kingdom. And also Daniel 7:14, to him was given dominion and glory. It's talking about the Son of Man, remember? Son of Man who is Messiah, remember? Because he's from the land of David, remember? That is a covenantal grant that God made with David. Covenantal and divine gifts. God gave his son, John 3:16. I give you eternal life. That's a gift. It's irrevocable. The gifts of God are irrevocable. The land and law. Genesis 15:18. To your descendants I have given this land. Matches Nathan almost word for word in these translations. In the Septuagint equivalence, in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, the verb Natan is almost always translated as adidamo in its form. Example, Genesis 17:8. I will give Natan to you and your descendants. See, I will give to you and your descendants the land. What does it say? Let's read it. And I will give to you and your offspring after you the land in which you are living as an alien, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting property. And I will be to them as God. It's a gift. No one can take it away. Thus, the Greek didymos is considered a functional and semantic equivalent of Natan in the biblical context. Okay? So we see that there's so many parallels and so many things that we can learn understanding these things. Let me go back to the book of Numbers. I want to share something with you that I think is important. Let me read this again. I think I already read this. Yeah, there we go. Check this out. It says, I already read this part. Okay, I already read this part. So let me look for the other one. Let me read chapter 14. The affront of the people against God's gift. I want you to think about this. Now we're going to get into the legal things. Okay? The people rejecting the gift. What happens to them if you reject the gift of God? You want to really know why you must stand for Israel right now? We are at a critical point in our own existence. This could lead to World War III. If all hell breaks loose and unleashes all over the world, you want to make sure to be counted as one of the few that when it mattered, you defended God's honor and God's word. Although there's war right now in Israel, I will always say the land belongs to God and the people belongs to God and the land is good and we must take it and we must visit. When this thing settles, I want to take a tour in November. I want to go and support them there. So you can go and see how beautiful, even though there's war and there may be some destruction, still the people are still willing to move forward, because even though you may not think they're completely obedient, they still believe in the God of Israel and they keep moving forward in a land that everyone hates them for, in a land that no one thinks is theirs, but yet they're the ones defending it. You need to make sure that you understand why you believe what you believe. You don't want to be on the other side, because I'm going to read to you what happens when you turn against God's gift. When you reject his gift, you're rejecting his righteousness and his grace. And you're putting into question his oath. Therefore, now his word is no longer valid. And that's really what we're doing if we do not believe in these things the way the Bible tells us. Then all the community lifted up their voices, and the people wept during that night, and all the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron. And all the community said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt or in the desert. How ungrateful they are. They were slaves. Why did the Lord bring us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our little children will be plundered. Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? They said to each other. And this is the worst thing they could have done. Let us appoint a leader, and we will return to Egypt. I'm not going to get all spiritual here, because many people are abandoning the Torah to go back to the church system. It got a little difficult. But here is the affront that will lead to the stories in chapter 16, 17, and 18. They rejected God's leaders. They rejected Moses and Aaron. Did Moses and Aaron knew what this meant? Let me read you the next verse and you see what I mean. And then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before the assembly of the community of the Israelites. Now you will think, why will they do that? Why will they bow down in front of them? Were they scared? No. They knew that the moment they turn against God, they turn against his promises, they turn against his character, they turn against his oath, thus committing ma'al against God. They're speaking against God now, because God placed those leaders there to lead them. They were not self-appointed. And Moses and Aaron understood this. That's why they fell on their faces, as a way to intercede on behalf of them. And in this chapter, you see how Moses intercedes on their behalf. And the assembly of the community of the Israelites, Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, found from the explorers of the land, tore their garments. That's why it's mourning. It's tearing their garments as a sign of mourning. They knew someone's going to die, because they rejected the gift, because they rejected the promise, because they shamed God's name, and they rather be slaves in Egypt, and then they self-appointing themselves leaders that God did not call for them to be led back into captivity. Is that who you want? Is that what you want? The Israel in these events is much different than the Israel 40 years later. 40 years later, they were willing to fight for the land. And you have 2 spies instead of 10. They go inside the city of Jericho. And there's a woman, Rahab, who actually defended them and protected them. You know why? Because she heard of the wonders and the signs that God did in the wilderness, and how the God of Israel, whom she never knew, but they heard how the Red Sea was dried up, and they heard how the kings were defeated, and thus she was willing to put her life in danger and die. With nothing to gain, she was a prostitute. No honor whatsoever. If they would have caught her, she would have died, and her family shamed and killed. And she was willing to defend the spies of the people of Israel, the Hebrews, because she heard of the wonders of God. And she believed, knowing that she had nothing to gain. That's a perfect example of what our faith should be like. Did I see the Red Sea open? No. Did I see God literally defeating the gods, the kings of the enemies in the wilderness? No. Did I see the rock split open in water? No. Did I see the manna from heaven? No. Did I see the pillar of fire? No. Did I see the tabernacle? No. But do I believe they're true? Yes. And that's why I will defend the people of Israel. Because I actually do believe, 100%, I believe that the God of Israel did those things and protected them. And there's sometimes I may be, like I get tired and I get, discouraged like anybody else. But there's always one thing that I always say, Adonai hu Elohim, the God of Israel, He is God. And I'm grateful that through the Master Yeshua, I'm able to be part of this kingdom. So yes, I will stand for Israel because God promised and He gave His oath of protection. He has proven that. Inquisitions, crusades, in the Holocaust, many died. And after they call out to God and they will deliver, the few that will deliver, look what they are doing now. The center and the pulse of the world, smack in the middle of Israel. And it's interesting that the conversation happening in social media and mainstream media right now is exactly the same one that happened in this week's portion. Whether or not it's legit to go to the land, or whether or not the people who are there, or whatever. We have the Bible, we have no excuse. We have to be a little bit more responsible than that. Please stand for Israel. Continue. It says, the land that we went through to explore as an exceptional good land. If the Lord delights in us, then He will bring us into this land and He will give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and you will not fear the people of the land, because they will be our food. Their protection has been turned from them. The Lord is with us. You should not fear them. And you know how the community responded? They wanted to stone them. These are the words you and I should be repeating today. So if you stand with Israel, let's take the example of Caleb and Joshua, what they said. And I'm going to read the verses. And anywhere you are with me right now around the world, repeat these words and believe it in your heart, because it's the same thing. The defenses of Iran are non-existent. Right now, there's an iron dome over Israel. Yes, some rockets have gone through. And unfortunately, the death, even if it's one, is too many. But imagine if we didn't have the iron dome. How many thousands of Jews would have died by now? So I'll say what Joshua says. So repeat after me. Okay? Right here in verse 7. And they said to all the community of the Israelites, the land that we went through to explore is an exceptionally good land. If the Lord delights in us, then He will bring us into this land, and He will give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and you will not fear the people of the land, because they will be our food. Their protection has been turned from them. The Lord is with us. You should not fear them. And let us not do what they did over there. They turned against the Lord. And let me keep reading the chapter. And all the community said to stone them and with stones. But the glory of the Lord appeared in the tent of assembly among the Israelites. And the Lord said to Moses, how long until this people will despise me? Wait a minute. They reject the land? And God considers that despising Him? Let me repeat that again. Hopefully, you guys can comment here in the chat real quick. Have you ever caught on to that? That speaking against the gift is despising God. I don't know if you caught on to that before. It says, how long will this people despise me? How long until they will not believe in me? In all the signs that I have done in their midst, I will strike them with disease and I will dispossess them. I will make you into a greater and stronger nation than them. Guys, what an offer. Can you imagine Moses? I mean, everything he went through takes him to Mount Sinai, gives him the Torah as a gift. And then when they're ready for the land being promised to them, given to them, they say no. And then God says, hey, Moses, I'll get rid of all of them and I'll give it to you. I'll make you stronger because you believed. What does Moses do? And Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear that you brought up this people from their midst in your power, and they will tell it to the inheritors of this land. They heard that you, Adonai, are in the midst of this people, that you are seen eye to eye, and your cloud is standing over them in a column of cloud, that you go before them by day and in a column of fire at night. But if you destroy these people all at once, the nations that will have heard your message will say, the Lord was unable to bring this people in the land that he swore by an oath, and he slaughtered them in the desert. But now please let the power of my Lord be great, just as you spoke. Pray this with me. The Lord is slow to anger and great of loyal love, forgiving sin and rebellion. For surely he leaves nothing unpunished, visiting the sin of the fathers, of the sons, on the third and the fourth generation. Please forgive the sins of this people according to the greatness of your loyal love, just as you forgave his people from Egypt until now. And then the Lord says, I have forgiven them according to your word. But as I live, the glory of the Lord will fill all the earth. But because of all of the men who have seen my glory and my signs I did in Egypt, in the desert, you tested me these 10 times and did not listen to my voice. They will not see the land that I swore by oath to our ancestors. And all those who despise me will not see it. Now, this is so cool right here. I mean, Caleb stands to defend God's honor, and then God defends his honor. I mean, can you imagine the God of Israel testifying this about you? What will you feel? How will you feel if you find out that the Lord feels like this about you? Listen to what God says to Moses about Caleb. He says, but my servant Caleb, because I know the Spirit was with him, he remained true after me, and I will bring him unto the land that he entered, and his offsprings will take possession of it. Now, guys, that's a royal grant that he gave Caleb, someone who defended the honor of God and his oath. And you all know the rest of the story. It was all by the oath. And because of the oath, we must be loyal to God. So I ask you, why should you believe in the land and the people? So because we're trying to be Jews? No. But because we believe the oath that God took. We believe the promise that he gave to our forefathers. We trust that he follows up in what he says. And I want to be like Caleb. Now, I don't know if God would ever testify on my behalf the way he did Caleb. And I think about that a lot. Would it be nice? I mean, can you imagine? The God of creation knowing you by your name? Recognizing your loyalty when no one else does? But I thought about this and I said, even if he never knows me, I'm still going to believe what he says. Because I've seen the land. I've walked the land. I've eaten of its fruit. I have gone from the north to Hermon, all the way to Elat. I have seen from the Jordan Valley all the way to the Via Maris. I have gone up to Jerusalem and walked the streets where the temple once stood. I have eaten of the dates and have partake of the olive, and I have drank of the wine. And I can tell you the land is good. It flows with milk and honey. And yes, there are enemies in the land that according to the word, they're giants. But if God is for us, who can be against us? So now today is the most important time that you understand why we must stand for Israel, for the land and for the people, and for the covenant. and as important, for our Messiah Yeshua. We're never going to abandon our Messiah in order to stand for Israel on the land, because Yeshua came to stand for the oath and the promises given to our forefathers. The New Testament testifies of this. We, at this time in history, when it matters, you could be known as the few who stood in loyalty to God and his oath, given to someone you never knew, in a land that probably some of you have never been to. This is the time for you to stand up and become like Joshua and Caleb, and let everybody know how good and righteous God is. Even if they're people, even if his people, even if we are not as righteous as him, even if we're not as obedient as he is. But we must believe in his oath and his alone, and not ours. We must believe in the promises that he's made and stand with them. And I'm looking for one more thing that I really want to read to you. And this is important, but I can't seem to find it right now. It's actually in regards to a covenantal relationship. And if you give me 1 minute, I'm going to try to find it. I think it may be in Genesis 15. It talks about the covenant. See if I find it, because it's really important. I already read this. There was another quote that I had that it was very important. That is from Nebuchadnezzar. It was a quote from Nebuchadnezzar in which it tells you who would inherit the kingdom and how, on a gift of a king. I can't seem to find it right now. It's really frustrating. Give me 1 second. Hopefully I'll get it here, because it's one of the things that it's really, here we go. Let me read this to you. It's not the one I was looking for, but at least it talks about the unconditional gift. And I'll be done with this. It says, unconditional gift. Although the grant to Abraham and David is close in its formulation to a Neo-Assyrian grant, and therefore may be late, the promises themselves are much older and reflect the Hittite pattern of grant, land, or house, dynasty. The object of the Abrahamic and Davidic covenants, respectively, are indeed the most prominent gifts of a suzerain, which is a king, in the Hittite and Syro-Palestinian political reality. Okay, that's what they call that Palestinian when they did this research. And like the Hittite grants, so also the grant of land to Abraham and the grant of the house of David are unconditional. Thus we read in the Treaty 38 of Hattusili III, and listen to the words, after you, your sons, your grandsons will possess it. Nobody will take it away from them. If one of your descendants sins, listen to this, if one of your descendants sins, the king will persecute him at his court. Then when he is found guilty, if he deserves death, he will die, but nobody will take away from the descendants of Ulmitesuv either his house, of his land, in order to give it to a descendant of somebody else. This is exactly the formula that you see in the Bible, in which God promises the land to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And let me prove it to you in the book of Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus chapter 26 talks about the repentance, either 26 and 27. I don't remember right now. Yeah, it's 26. It's about the penalty of disobedience. And I'm going to finish with this reading. Verse 40 all the way to the end. And I want us to meditate on these words. These are powerful words that God himself says. And remember, the grant is irrevocable. And remember, the grant cannot be taken away by the king. Even if the people sin, but God still honors his oath to the people and the descendants of them and the land. Remember that. Says, but when they confess their sins and the guilt of their ancestors in their infidelity that they displayed against me, and moreover, that they went against me in hostility, I myself also went against them in hostility, and I brought them into the land of their enemies. Or if then their uncircumcised heart is humbled, and then they pay for their guilt, I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and I will remember my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land, and the land shall be deserted by them, and it shall enjoy its Sabbath, so it has been desolate from them, and they themselves must pay for their guilt, simply because they rejected my regulations, and their inner self abhorred my statutes. But in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them, and I will not abhor them to destroy them, to break my covenant with them, because I am the Lord their God. And I will remember the first covenant for them, whom I brought out from the land of Egypt, in the sight of all the nations, to be their God. I am the Lord. These are the rules and the regulations and the laws that the Lord gave between himself and the Israelites on Mount Sinai through Moses. So God hath said he will never forget, he will remember, and he will restore, because the gifts that he gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are irrevocable, and no one can take them away, not even the king. So if you're faithful, if you fight for the land, if you stand for the people, you are standing for his honor. You are standing to make his name great. So I encourage you, stand for the name of God. You want to do it? This is a proper way. Speak on behalf of the land and stand for the people. If you stand for them, you're standing for the one who swore by his great name that he will restore, he will rebuild, and he will bring the children of Israel, which you and I are now grafted into by grace through faith, to the inheritance of our forefathers. May the Lord bless you and keep you and bless you and guard you. Please subscribe, share, and like the YouTube page. Let others know. Learn this information. Share with as many people. And I pray someday the Lord will enlarge our territory, will allow us to speak to a broader audience, so we will be able to stand in the gap for his honor, for his integrity, for his character. Just like Yeshua did, hopefully we will have an opportunity to also do it in the eyes of the peoples. Adonai hu Elohim. Shalom.